I came home that night, later than usual, though for once, I'd hoped to surprise her by not staying at work until midnight. The first thing I noticed was the door to our bedroom, slightly ajar. Yellow light spilled into the dark hallway, and for a moment I thought I heard voices, a soft sound. Then I heard her voice, low, almost breathless. I'd never known my heart could beat so hard that I could practically taste blood in my mouth. My legs felt hollow, and a wave of heat swept through my chest. I remember thinking, this isn't possible. This can't be happening. Then I took 2 more steps toward the bedroom and heard another sound. A man's voice, quieter but unmistakably male. I should have walked away. My mind screamed at me to leave the house, to give myself time to think or at least to brace for whatever I was about to see. But the rest of me just kept moving, drawn by a terrible compulsion, because deep down, in that black pit of gut feeling, I already knew. The smell hit me first, an unfamiliar cologne. Musky, citrusy, definitely not mine. And not just the cologne. The scent of sweat, the thick, heavy aura of intimacy I'd never detected in our bedroom before. Or maybe we'd had it once, when things were fresh and exciting, but it had long faded into the routine of marriage. My chest tightened. I wanted to cough, to do anything to break the silence. But I didn't. I just stood there, half hidden by the doorframe, seeing a reflection in the mirror on the opposite side of the room. She was turned away from me, kneeling on the bed, her face half buried in a pillow. Her hair, brownish, soft waves, cascaded over her shoulders. There was no mistaking the shape of her, the arch of her back. And behind her, a man I'd never met but had heard about in passing. I could see the back of his head, the angle of his shoulders, his hands on her hips. My wife, Evelyn, was lost in the moment with him. I have no idea how long I stood there. Time seemed to warp, every second becoming a deliberate slash in the side of my heart, every exhaled breath like an earthquake in my head. I heard something from her that sounded like a muffled moan. The bed's creaks, skin against skin. My mind tried to reject it, but it was there in front of me, painfully real. And then, all at once, my body moved. I turned the knob and opened the door fully. They both froze as if someone had paused the scene, both sets of eyes whipping around to me. Evelyn's hair fell across her face, and she stared at me in total shock, parted lips trembling. The man, Mark, I would learn his name quickly enough, stared as though he'd just seen a ghost. For a moment, nobody spoke, nobody moved. The tension was so dense I could feel it crushing my ribs. I don't know what I expected, maybe shouting, maybe them scrambling to cover up. Instead, everything seemed to happen in slow motion. Evelyn grabbed at the sheets to cover herself. Mark rolled away, half toppling off the bed. I stood there, watching them scramble. My mind was a numb haze. I remember the color of the sheets. Dark purple, ironically a set we just bought. I saw the half-drawn blinds where the Chicago skyline glinted in the distance. Evelyn tried to speak first, but all she managed was a stutter, some feeble attempt at an explanation that died in the back of her throat. "John," she said. "That's all. John." My name, so small and shaky on her lips. Mark's face twisted in a grimace, like he was trying to figure out if he should apologize, or run, or fight. He said something like, "I'm sorry, man," but he was backing away from me, grabbing for his pants on the floor. He pulled them on in a frenzy, fumbling. He wouldn't meet my eyes. I just stood still. I didn't ask them questions. It was so obvious what this was. My gaze flicked to Evelyn. She held the sheet over her chest, her skin flushed. A bead of sweat ran down her temple. We locked eyes for half a second. She tried again. It's not what it looks like." Those words, of all possible worthless cliches, something snapped inside me. I gave a short, breathless laugh. No humor in it at all, just a strangled exhale that sounded almost like a cough. Then I turned around and walked out of the room. I heard Mark's voice behind me. "Should I?" He didn't finish, didn't say what he should do, didn't say if he should leave, if he should hide. I didn't care. Let him do whatever he wanted. I walked down the hallway, my ears ringing, my thoughts hammered in my skull. I should have said something or done something, but I had no words. Fury, disbelief, heartbreak, it all collided inside me, swirling like a tornado I didn't know how to control. I went downstairs to the kitchen. The place smelled like leftover coffee and cheap fabric softener. The counters were stacked with mail, a couple of her magazines, a glass half filled with water from that morning. Everything seemed so normal except for the pounding in my ears and the residue of that cologne lingering on my clothes, like it had followed me out of the bedroom. A few minutes later, Mark came tumbling down the stairs, shoes in hand. He avoided my gaze entirely. I heard him open the front door, fumble with the lock, then slam it behind him. And that was it. Gone. Evelyn came down next, wrapped in her robe. She smelled of sweat and sex, and a perfume I recognized as the one I'd given her on our anniversary. She tried to talk, stepping slowly toward me like I was a wounded animal about to bite. "John, please, just, please, let me explain. Let's go somewhere else. Let's just." She tried to take my arm, but I pulled away. My throat felt like sandpaper. "I don't think I want an explanation right now," I said. And that was the truth. Part of me wanted to throw every dish in the kitchen at the wall, to shout and scream. But a more potent part just wanted to shut down, to shut everything out. She began to cry, quietly at first. "It wasn't planned," she said, her voice trembling. He's a friend from work. He's a designer. I swear I didn't mean. It just happened. Right." My voice sounded hollow to my own ears. "I'm sorry," she repeated. "I'm so sorry." I didn't respond. My mind felt like it was sinking into quicksand. Then I walked out of the kitchen, grabbed my jacket off the couch, and left the house without another word. Outside, the suburban street was quiet. A car rumbled by, some kid's music blaring from inside. Otherwise, only the chirp of distant crickets. The lamplights glowed on the sidewalk. I got in my car but didn't start it for a while. I just sat there, staring at the wheel, trying not to see that image of Evelyn with him. She used to say she wanted passion in life, excitement, something that made her feel alive. I'd told her many times that real life isn't always about fireworks. Sometimes it's about quiet contentment, building a future. Maybe that bored her. Maybe it was my fault. But in that moment, I felt more numb than anything. Eventually, I switched on the ignition and drove to a motel, checking in with the same blank expression I'd had since leaving the house. As soon as I got a room, I closed the door, sat on the edge of the bed, and stared at the floor. I didn't want to think. I wanted to disappear, or perhaps stop existing altogether. Anything but face the fact that my wife had just been with another man. When the sun came up the next day, I was still awake. The feeling in my stomach was like a gaping hole, raw and nauseating. I showered, dressed in yesterday's clothes, and drove to work. I spent the day going through the motions. Colleagues asked if I was all right. I mumbled something about not sleeping well. I didn't contact Evelyn. She tried calling me over and over, but I didn't pick up. By the time I finally listened to one of her voicemails, I heard her sobbing, saying she needed me to come home, that we had to fix this. I tossed the phone aside. I wasn't ready. I was too angry, too hurt. I still saw them together every time I blinked. I spent 2 nights at that motel, hardly sleeping. My mind wouldn't settle. My heart felt battered, torn. By the 3rd day, I forced myself to return home. Not because I was over it, far from it, but because I had to face her, to see what we were going to do next. Maybe see if she'd even still be there. Part of me expected her to run off with him. When I walked in, the house smelled of bleach. She'd spent the past 2 days cleaning, trying to erase every sign of him. I guess. She was in the living room, perched on the edge of the couch like a guilty child. I noticed her eyes were red from crying, her cheeks blotchy. She stood up as soon as I entered, but I held up a hand. "Not right now," I said. That was all. I went upstairs, took a shower. I hated that the bed still carried some faint ghost of that musky cologne. It was like a rancid echo that made me want to rip the sheets off and burn them. Later, she tried to approach me again, to tell me everything. How she and Mark started talking after work, how they'd gone out with colleagues a few times, how it led to late-night coffee meetups, how lines got blurred. She insisted it was the first time they'd actually slept together. Maybe it was. Maybe it wasn't. At that point, did it even matter? I wanted to lash out, to demand every little detail, just so I could be sure of how deep the knife had gone into my back. But I couldn't bring myself to ask. The images in my head were already more than I could handle. She kept sobbing, "I'm sorry," until it sounded meaningless, like a broken record. And I stared at her, noticing how the tears streaked her mascara. She looked so desperate. But all I felt was hollow. After a while, I said quietly, "I want you to leave me alone." That night, I slept on the couch, though I didn't truly sleep, just lay there, staring at the streetlights outside. Half of me wished I could vanish. The other half was consumed with a throbbing fury I had no clue how to express. I wanted her to feel everything I felt, to carry the same weight, but I didn't know how to push it on her. I'd always been the type to talk things out, to find common ground. Now I discovered an entirely different side of myself, the side that shut down. 2 days later, I began leaving her letters. It happened almost by accident. I was sitting at my desk at work, trying to edit a manuscript, but my eyes wouldn't focus. My thoughts kept drifting to her, to them, and a weird idea formed. I'd write notes not as myself, but as if I were the man she'd chosen over me. The kind of man who saw her every day and reveled in possessing her. I scratched out a few lines on a piece of scrap paper. "I see you in your laughter, your eyes shining with secrets meant only for me. You think I don't notice how your hair falls across your shoulder, but I do. I imagine holding you when no one else can. We are free from the daily grind of life." It wasn't exactly poetry, but it felt like a dagger to my own heart. Writing from that perspective, it was twisted, yet it gave me a place to channel all that raw hurt. So I folded the paper, took it home, and left it on her dresser. I didn't say anything about it. I just watched from the corner of my eye later that night when she found it. She blinked. Confusion etched across her face. The note had no signature. She looked up at me, eyes wide. "What is this?" she asked, her voice trembling. I shrugged and walked away. The next day, I wrote another one. Longer this time, more vivid. I wrote of how this other man loved the shape of her mouth, how he cherished the warmth of her breath on his skin. I described the intimacy in a way that I imagined they might have shared. It made my hands shake with rage as I penned it. But I couldn't stop. I left it on the kitchen table that evening. She read it in silence, tears brimming. Then she rushed to me, practically begging, "Stop this, please. You're killing me." I said nothing. At first, her reaction was confusion and anger. She told me to quit messing with her head. Then she pivoted to shame and apologies. She'd throw her arms around me, sobbing, insisting it wasn't true, that she never cared for him the way the letters implied. I'd peel her arms off me gently and walk away. The more letters I wrote, the calmer I became. It was as if transferring my pain onto paper let me function again. But it was also a slow torture for her. Sometimes I'd catch her reading the letters over and over, tears sliding down her cheeks, lips quivering. She pressed them into her chest, as if trying to smother a bullet wound. It twisted my gut with a strange, conflicting satisfaction. I hated the part of me that felt good watching her suffer, but it was there, and I couldn't deny it. I avoided Mark entirely. I didn't confront him, didn't call him, didn't show up at his workplace. That might have been the normal route. Tracking him down, beating the hell out of him, telling him to stay away from my wife. but I found I had no desire to do that. There was an emptiness in me now, a sense that my real fight wasn't with Mark. It was with Evelyn, with what she and I had become, and with myself, because I couldn't ignore my own failure to keep us strong. After a week of silent nights and cold stares, Evelyn confronted me in the kitchen. She'd just finished reading the latest letter, which described how the other man imagined sitting with her in bed at dawn, tracing his fingers down her spine, whispering the secrets of his day. It was a quiet scene, so intimate it made me feel ill while writing it. She set it down on the countertop with trembling hands. "Why are you doing this to me?" she asked, voice raw. "If you want me gone, say it. If you want a divorce, just say it." I met her gaze. "No," I said, my voice oddly calm. "I don't want a divorce." She blinked. Then, What do you want?" I wanted to say, "I want you to feel every stab of betrayal I feel. I want you to understand how it feels to be worthless." But the words wouldn't come. Instead, I shook my head. "I don't know. John, this isn't right. I know I messed up. I know I did a horrible thing. And I'll never be able to take it back. But torturing me with these letters, it's not going to fix us." I stared at her, feeling so far away from the man I used to be. "There is no us to fix," I said. "Not anymore." A fresh wave of tears flooded her eyes. She opened her mouth, but nothing came out. And for a moment, we stood there, the tension between us thick and suffocating. Then I walked past her, leaving her alone with that letter, describing a morning that probably mirrored something she had once shared with Mark. If she asked me, I would have told her. I started writing these notes because I didn't know how else to talk to her. The real me was empty, locked in some silent chamber of my own making. The only voice I had left was that imaginary husband she could have had if she'd chosen him. Someone I believed she must have wanted more than me at some point. But she didn't ask. She just begged me to stop. The second week, my quiet hostility only grew. She followed me around the house, apologizing, crying, promising she'd do anything to make things right. Every time her hand touched my shoulder or tried to hold my arm, I stiffened. I couldn't stand her touch, not after seeing her with him. I'd slip into my office and close the door, hearing her muffled sobs through the wood. Sometimes, the rage made me want to break things. But mostly, I just existed in a muted haze, functioning enough to get through the day. Sleeping on the couch, ignoring her calls if I was out, treating her like a stranger in my own home. She started to look unwell, dark circles under her eyes, hair unkempt. She missed a day of work, then another. When she wasn't crying, she tried to take care of me, cooking dinner, leaving it on the table even though I almost never ate it. She tried to do my laundry, tidy my office, anything. Every time, I just stared at her with that vacant look. Once she found me in the garage, half-heartedly sorting tools. She stood there in a sweater and jeans, her eyes darting to the boxes, to the dust. She swallowed hard. "John, please, just say something. Anything." "There's nothing to say," I murmured. Her lips trembled, but she turned and left. One evening, about 2 weeks after I'd discovered them, she stood in the doorway of the living room where I sat on the couch. I had the TV on, volume low, some inane infomercial droning in the background. She lingered there with her arms folded, and I noticed her nails had been bitten down. She used to keep them meticulously manicured. She walked around, sat at the far end of the couch, not too close. "I'm sorry," she said softly. "You're probably sick of hearing it, but I can't stop saying it." I kept my eyes on the TV. "I know." She waited a moment, then added, "I want to tell you how it all began. Maybe it means nothing at this point, but I need you to hear it." I almost said no, but something made me let her speak. She talked about late nights at the office, about how Mark was charismatic, funny, always the life of the group. He'd invited her for coffee, just to discuss some marketing ideas. It turned into an after-work drink. She was lonely. She felt something was missing in her life. An excitement, a spark. So she gravitated toward him, even as she knew it was wrong. One thing led to another, she said. She lost control. I felt my jaw clench, but I stayed silent. She was trying to show remorse, trying to lay it out so I'd see it wasn't my fault. But I didn't believe it fully, or maybe part of me just didn't care. Finally, she said, I was an idiot. I never meant to hurt you like this. It was a moment of weakness. A moment. I repeated softly. My voice shook. You think it was just a moment? She closed her eyes, tears rolling down her cheeks. I don't know. I'm so confused. That was the last we spoke that night. Another week passed. I kept writing letters. It turned into a ritual. I'd sit at my desk in the evenings, scribble down a paragraph or two as if from the perspective of the man who had claimed her. Each letter contained some new angle, a new image, a new fantasy that might have existed if she'd truly fallen for him. And every time, I left it somewhere for her to find. Her reaction varied. Sometimes anger, sometimes heartbreak, always tears. I rarely spoke, except to ask her to pass the salt at dinner, or to say a flat thanks if she brought me coffee. She tried so hard to fix something irreparable. I started noticing that, as I wrote these letters, a strange calm settled over me. I became more polite, more controlled, as if all my bitterness flowed onto the page. She noticed it too. You're so quiet now, so cold. I don't know what to do with that. But in truth, she was unraveling. I heard her crying in the shower, sobbing in bed at night. Once, I found her in the kitchen at 3 a.m, sitting at the table in the dark, clutching one of the letters to her chest. I stood in the doorway and watched her for a minute without speaking. The moonlight glinted off the tear tracks on her face. When she finally saw me, she whispered, I can't lose you. Please, I'll do anything. I stared at her for a moment. Anything? She nodded, desperate. I thought about it. Then said, I don't need anything from you. It was the bleak truth. I didn't need her to do anything. I just wanted her to suffer as I was suffering, to feel the anguish. Then I turned away, leaving her alone in the dark. Day by day, I realized I wasn't sure if I wanted her to stay or leave. Part of me wanted to throw her out, to burn every memory we had. Another part of me still loved her in a twisted, battered way. Sometimes I'd watch her from across the room, noticing her features, remembering how I used to trace her cheekbones. Now, I felt only the dull ache. A month or so passed in this deadlock of tension and silence. Our conversations were minimal. The letters piled up in a drawer by her bedside. She kept them all, as if each one were a punishment she had to endure. Meanwhile, Mark seemed to have vanished from our life. Or maybe he was texting her in secret. I never bothered to check her phone. I didn't care enough to do that. If she was still seeing him, I'd already lost. If she wasn't, I still felt I'd lost anyway. On a Tuesday night, after I came home from work, she stood in the hallway, her shoulders trembling. John, she said, we need to talk. About. I replied, setting down my briefcase. Her eyes flickered with an odd mix of fear and determination. About us. About what you're doing, and how we can't keep living like this. I walked past her. Don't see that we have much choice. She grabbed my arm, not forcefully, but firmly enough that I stopped. Don't walk away from me. I know you hate me, or you think you do. But you're burying yourself in this misery, and her voice cracked. I can't take it anymore, John. I'm sorry for what I did. I'm sorry. But I can't keep living like a prisoner in my own house. I looked at her hand on my sleeve. What do you want me to say? She swallowed. I want you to scream, or yell, or cry, or hit me. Anything. I want you to stop torturing me with these letters and this icy silence. Tell me I ruined your life. Throw me out. Do something. But don't let me keep dying inside with every new note you leave. Her words hung in the air. My chest burned with repressed anger. You want me to break down. I said, voice low. You want me to vent every ounce of rage, I felt since I saw you in our bed with him. Would that help you sleep at night? She shook her head, tears glimmering in her eyes. No, but at least it'd be real. At least I'd know you still feel something. I barked out a bitter laugh. Feel something? God, Evelyn, you have no idea. I can't get the image of him touching you out of my head. It's with me every second of the day. I can't eat. I can't sleep. I go to work and stare at the screen because I see you in that bed every time I close my eyes. She pressed her lips together, tears spilling. I'm sorry. I wish I could undo it. I wish, but you can't, I said, ripping my arm away. You can't undo what you did. She flinched, and I realized my voice had grown louder. I took a step back, inhaling deeply, trying to control myself. The truth was, every muscle in my body felt coiled like a spring, ready to snap. But as quickly as it flared, that anger collapsed back into the heavy emptiness I'd carried for weeks. I stepped away, heading into the living room. That's all, I muttered. No more talk tonight. She stood there, sobbing quietly until I left. The next day, I continued my letter ritual. This time I wrote something particularly vicious. I imagined he was describing how he would keep her laughing in ways I never could, how he understood her better than I did, how her eyes shone only for him. As soon as I finished, my stomach churned with self-loathing. But I placed it on her nightstand anyway. I had no plan other than fueling this slow burn. That evening, she found it, read it, and came downstairs with it in her hand. She stared at me with a trembling chin, tears welling up again. But instead of sobbing, she tore the letter in half. Then in half again. She threw the pieces at my feet. Her voice shook but was louder than I'd heard in weeks. I refuse to let you do this anymore. She pointed at the shredded paper on the floor. I won't let you keep destroying me. If you want me gone, I'll pack my things tonight. But I'm done being your punching bag. I rose from the couch, feeling a surge of something hot in my chest. I advanced on her, fury in my eyes. She stood her ground, tears streaking her cheeks. I said I was sorry, she whispered. I said it 1,000 times. If you can't forgive me, then let me go. For a heartbeat, we just faced each other. Then, in a moment of clarity I can't fully explain, I realized that if I kicked her out, if I ended it right here, I might never get closure. She'd always be a bleeding wound in my memory. And maybe a tiny part of me still wanted to see if something remained between us worth saving or worth avenging. I said nothing, but my hands were shaking. She gave a small broken sigh and turned away, stomping upstairs, perhaps to pack. That night, I didn't leave a letter. For the first time since I'd begun this twisted campaign, I went to my office, closed the door, and sat there with a blank sheet of paper. My pen hovered, but I couldn't write. Anger seethed in me, but I had no words. Finally, I crumpled the paper and shoved it in the trash. In the morning, Evelyn was still there, exhausted and pale. She eyed me warily, as if expecting me to lash out or demand she leave. Instead, I walked past her with barely a nod and went to work. Days blurred into one another. She tiptoed around me, uncertain if I'd lash out again or revert to lethal silence. I was locked in my own world, haunted by images of her betrayal. I started working late at the office again, sometimes sleeping there. My colleagues asked if I was sick. I just shook my head, uninterested in confiding. Then, maybe a month and a half into this nightmare, I found an unexpected letter on my desk at home. It was from Evelyn, a single page folded neatly. The sight of it made my heart pound. I opened it. I know I can't fix what I did, and these words might mean nothing to you, but I have to say them anyway. I have no excuses for betraying you. I was selfish, lonely, and scared of being ordinary. I chose the worst possible way to cope. Every day since you found out, I felt my life drain away in guilt and regret. I deserve the pain you've inflicted with those letters. But I also want you to know I'm still here. I still love you. even if you never believe that again. I'll wait for your decision. If you want me to leave, say so. If you want me to stay, you have to talk to me. You have to let me in. I read it 3 times, my eyes stinging. A war raged inside me. Part of me wanted to tear it up just as she had torn mine. Another part recognized how desperate she was, how those words, though not enough, were at least honest. She was handing me the chance to choose. I had no idea what I wanted. A bleak sense of emptiness had become my norm. Sleep was a distant dream. I'd close my eyes and see them together, smell that hateful cologne. I'd wonder if her moans for him were the same as for me. I'd wonder if she'd lost respect for me as a man. If I was less than him, less attractive, less exciting. The torture in my mind never ceased, but her letter flicked something inside me like a small spark, a reminder that maybe there was still a path forward. Though whether that path meant forgiveness or final separation, I didn't know. The next few days, I didn't write her any more letters. She seemed almost afraid to hope, as though bracing for another storm. One night, she ventured into the living room where I sat. I could see her standing there out of the corner of my eye, shifting her weight from foot to foot. Finally, she spoke softly. "I miss you." I turned the TV off. "I'm still here." "But not really," she said, tears filling her eyes. "I feel like you're so far away that I can't reach you, no matter how hard I try." A long silence stretched. Then, for the first time in weeks, I tried to speak from the raw place inside me. "I loved you," I whispered, my throat tight. "Hell, I still love you in some way. But I don't trust you anymore." Her face contorted. "I know. And I don't trust myself, either," I continued, swallowing hard. "I can't look at you without remembering what I saw. It's like, every time we're in the same room, it's in my head. I can't make it stop." She approached slowly, hesitantly. "I want to tell you how sorry I am. I know you think it doesn't matter anymore, but it does. I'll say it 1,000 times, 10,000 times, if that's what it takes." I looked down at my hands, which were shaking again. "It'll never be enough." She sank to her knees beside me, tears dripping. "Then tell me what I can do. Tell me how to make things right. Please." My eyes burned with tears I was too proud to shed in front of her. "I don't know," I whispered, voice trembling. "Maybe there's nothing." She let out a quiet sob. I realized a moment later that I had tears in my own eyes. I tried to hide them, but she reached up, gently wiping one away. I flinched at her touch. She withdrew her hand, and an unbearable sadness filled her face. In that moment, I felt like the cruelest man alive. But I couldn't help it. Over the next week, something inside me changed. Not forgiveness. I was far from forgiving her. But my thirst for vengeance ebbed. I stopped writing letters. I started sleeping in the bedroom again, though I never touched her. We lay on opposite sides of the bed, silent as strangers. She breathed softly in the darkness, sometimes weeping into the pillow. I'd stare at the ceiling, counting the cracks. I wanted answers. Did I truly want to keep her in my life, or was I just too broken to end it? Was there any chance I could ever see her as the woman I once loved instead of the one who betrayed me? Some nights, I half wished I'd die in my sleep, because living with these questions was worse than any nightmare. Amid this silent stalemate, I noticed her trying to do little things for me again, making me coffee in the morning, folding my laundry, leaving small notes that said, "I hope your day is bearable," or "thinking of you." She seemed determined to show she cared, even as she knew I might not respond. Finally, the tension reached a boiling point. One night, she approached me while I was getting ready for bed. She looked exhausted, her eyes rimmed with red. "John," she whispered, "I can't keep waiting for you to decide if I'm worth it. I need you to talk to me. I need to know if there's any future for us." I exhaled slowly. "If you expect me to just forgive and forget." "I don't." She cut in, voice trembling. "I don't expect anything. I need to know if you still see any possibility that we rebuild something here, or do you want me gone?" I stared at her. She had that same desperate look she'd worn the day I came home and found her with Mark. But this time, it was a different desperation, a longing for redemption, perhaps. The anger in me simmered. Part of me wanted to say, "Get out." But all that rose to my lips was a bitter whisper. "I can't give you an answer right now." She nodded, tears flooding her eyes. "Then I'll wait," she said. "But please, let me in a little bit. Let me see what you're feeling." I stared at the floor, silent. Eventually, she turned and left, and I stood there, my mind turning in circles. In the following days, she tried to talk more, to break through my walls. She apologized again and again, confessed her regrets. She told me she'd broken off all contact with Mark, that she'd even asked her boss to reassign them so they wouldn't be on the same projects. She insisted that if I needed any reassurance, I could check her phone, her email, anything. I didn't check. I wasn't sure it mattered. The betrayal had already happened. Whatever she did now was just damage control. Still, a tiny flickering ember of compassion stirred somewhere in me. This was the woman I had once adored, who had once given me reason to believe in a future together. Now we were two battered souls trapped under the same roof. One evening, she found me in the living room again, as it so often seemed to happen. The quiet was thick between us. She sat down beside me on the couch, leaving a foot or two of space, as if I might recoil if she got too close. "I read your letters over and over," she said softly. "They're heartbreaking, John. They hurt me so much, but they also made me see how deeply I hurt you. I don't know how to repair that." I swallowed, my throat tight. "I don't know if you can," I said. She inhaled shakily. "Do you want to?" I thought for a moment, then said, "I'm not sure." That was the truth. The easy way would be to end this, to let all our marriage vows crumble into dust. But I realized that even after the pain, the silent fury, the vengeful notes, I still cared if she lived or died. I still felt a glimmer of something I couldn't name. Maybe it was love, or maybe it was just the inertia of so many years together. She placed a trembling hand on mine. I didn't pull away this time, but I didn't grip her back. My hand remained limp. "Unwilling to do anything," she murmured. "Therapy, moving somewhere new, quitting my job, whatever it takes." I found myself letting out a long, exhausted sigh. "I don't want you to quit your job or upend your life. That won't fix what happened." "Then what will?" she asked, tears in her eyes. I shook my head. "I don't know. Maybe time." She nodded, as if accepting the only answer I could give. Days turned into another week. The house felt like a waiting room, tense, quiet, expectant. I no longer left letters. She no longer left me anxious little notes. We orbited each other in uneasy limbo. Then came the night she confronted me fully. No tears, no trembling voice, just raw determination. We were in the kitchen, finishing a silent dinner. She set her fork down, looked me in the eye, and said, "John, this has to end. This silence, this misery, it's killing both of us. If we can't find a way forward, then we need to separate." I leaned back in my chair, crossing my arms. My chest felt tight. "So, that's it. You're ready to leave?" She shook her head. "No, but I'm ready to give you the choice. We either fight for this or we let it go. We can't stay in limbo forever." Her words sliced through me. In that moment, I realized I'd been clinging to our silent war because it let me punish her without the risk of a real final decision. Letting go, whether that meant moving forward together or splitting up, was far more terrifying, because it meant I had to face the idea that I might never get rid of the pain, no matter what we chose. I stood up, pushing my chair away. "What if I don't know yet? Then you need to decide," she said firmly, tears shimmering but not falling. "I love you, John, and I will always regret what I did. But I can't keep living like a ghost in this house." I gazed at her for a long time. I don't want you to leave me," I admitted. My voice cracked. She took a step closer. "Then we'll try." I nodded slowly, swallowing the lump in my throat. "But I don't know how," I whispered, my eyes stinging with unshed tears. "I'm so angry. And I'm so hurt. Sometimes I think I could kill myself just so I don't have to feel it anymore." Her face crumpled. She came nearer, hesitated, then wrapped her arms around me gently. I stiffened but didn't push her away. Slowly, I allowed my head to rest against her shoulder. I felt her warmth, her heartbeat. My own grief welled up, a silent tide in my chest. She whispered, "I'm sorry." I closed my eyes, feeling tears slip out. I hated crying. I especially hated letting her see me cry. But the dam had broken, and I couldn't stop. It felt like letting go of a terrible burden, if only for a few moments. She held me, stroking my hair, tears running down her own face, though we both knew this embrace wouldn't magically fix everything. It was just a small step out of the darkness. After a while, we pulled apart. I felt shaky, undone. But maybe that was the first real moment of honesty we'd shared since it all happened. In the days that followed, we finally spoke about what therapy might look like, how we tried to rebuild trust. We didn't have illusions it would be easy. Sometimes I'd snap at her, or she'd dissolve into guilt-ridden apologies. Sometimes I'd sink into a numb corner of my mind, where I replayed that awful image of her with Mark. But at least we were talking. We were acknowledging the weight of what she'd done, and what I'd become in response. One evening, she confessed that Mark had tried to contact her, asking if she was okay, if she still wanted to see him. She showed me the text message on her phone, letting me read it. I felt my pulse spike, but she insisted she had no intention of responding, that she just wanted to be transparent. I deleted the message right there. She let me. It still stung to know he existed, that he had touched her in ways I thought only I did. But by sharing that message with me, she showed me a bit of genuine honesty I desperately needed to see. Our progress was halting, uncertain, filled with moments when I thought I'd rather lock myself away than face her. We scheduled a counseling session, though I felt half skeptical. She repeated her willingness to do whatever it took. I hovered between hope and despair, not sure which was stronger. Still, something was shifting. The nights on the couch gave way to a tentative attempt at sleeping next to each other. We didn't hold hands, didn't cuddle, but we shared the same bed, the same space, both of us understanding how fragile that arrangement was. Then came an evening when she broke down in tears in front of me, sobbing that she was terrified I'd never truly forgive her. All I could say was, "I don't know if I can," which made her cry harder. But strangely, once the storm of tears passed, we found ourselves sitting on the living room floor, exhausted, leaning against the couch. She rested her head on my shoulder, and I let her. For the first time, I felt a flicker of compassion that wasn't drowned by anger. She looked so small, so broken. A part of me realized that I wasn't the only one destroyed by her affair. She destroyed herself too, at least the version of her she wanted to be. I wasn't sure how to handle that feeling, but I let it sit in my chest for a while. One by one, the nights turned into a routine of forced honesty. She'd ask me how I felt. I'd try to articulate the swirling bitterness inside. She'd listen, often in tears, but never backing away. Sometimes we argued, my voice rising in a fury I'd kept bottled for weeks. She'd cry, but she'd stay, and each time I laid my anger bare, I felt a tiny fraction less weighed down. I never apologized for the letters I wrote, though I wondered sometimes if I should. They were cruel, manipulative, but they were also the only way I had to speak when everything was locked behind heartbreak and rage. She never demanded an apology, either. Maybe she felt she deserved that punishment. Maybe she just understood that the pain I'd poured onto those pages was bigger than both of us. Our arguments were ugly, raw. More than once, she nearly left the house in tears, keys in hand. But something always pulled her back. Maybe desperation, maybe guilt, maybe stubborn love. I teetered between pushing her away and clinging to her presence. Some nights, I'd stare at her across the dinner table and wonder if it might be easier to end this, to sign divorce papers and start over alone. But I couldn't quite do it. There was a final confrontation that ended everything, or rather, ended the phase of silent torment. It happened on a Friday night after an especially long work week. I was beyond exhausted, mentally and physically. We were in the kitchen again, the place where so many of our worst talks had happened. She tried to approach me gently, but I snapped at her, telling her to leave me alone. She squared her shoulders. No, not this time. We can't keep doing this back and forth. I can't take one more night of guessing if tomorrow you'll hate me or just ignore me. I glared. What do you want me to say? I want the truth, she said, eyes brimming with tears but voice steady. Do you still love me at all? The question hung in the air like a live wire. I opened my mouth to respond, but no words came. Finally, I forced out a hoarse whisper. Yes, but I also hate you for what you did. Her breath caught. I deserve that, she said softly. My throat felt raw, like I'd been screaming for hours. Maybe you do. But I can't keep living like this. The thought of you with him, it makes me want to. I nearly said die, but I couldn't form the word. She stepped closer, tears slipping down her cheeks. I promise you, there's nothing between me and him anymore. I told him to never speak to me again. I blocked him everywhere. I just want us to somehow get past this, no matter how long it takes. I stared into her eyes, searching for any trace of deception. All I saw was exhaustion and anguish. I realized, with a jolt, that she looked about as broken as I felt. Neither of us was winning this war. We were both casualties. Slowly, I reached up and brushed a tear from her cheek. My hand trembled. She let out a shaky breath, her eyes sliding shut at my touch. In that moment, I felt so many conflicting emotions. Anger, sorrow, remnants of love, betrayal, longing. I remembered the day I married her, how certain I'd been that I'd found the person I could trust with my life. Now here we were, trying to piece together a relationship shattered by betrayal. I pulled my hand away, then exhaled a heavy breath. You destroyed me, Evelyn, I said quietly. I don't know if I can ever be the man I was before. But I'm willing to try to find a new way to be with you, if you'll do the same. Her eyes snapped open, tears streaming. Yes, of course. I nodded, feeling an ache inside my chest that was almost too big to bear. All right then, I said, swallowing hard. We do this properly. Therapy, honest conversations, no more lies. And if at any point I decide it's too much, I'll tell you. And we part ways. Understand? She stepped forward, tentatively placing her arms around me. And this time, I let her hold me. My head sank against her shoulder. We both stood there, trembling, for what felt like an eternity. I could feel her heartbeat thudding, and maybe she felt mine. It wasn't a romantic moment. It was more like two people clinging to the last rope over a pit. In the days that followed, we made arrangements for therapy sessions. We began to talk about the future, gingerly, painfully aware that any reference to us could trigger a landslide of hurt. I never promised her I'd forget what she did, and she never asked me to. We just agreed we'd try to rebuild from the ashes, knowing the scars might never fade. Looking back, I realized the scariest part was never the thought of leaving her. It was the thought of feeling nothing. The letters I wrote were my desperate attempt to evoke some reaction in myself and in her, because the real terror was the possibility of becoming indifferent. When a man loses love, the next worst thing isn't hatred. It's apathy, a deadness inside that makes life feel meaningless. So, after all the anger, all the letters dripping with vicious fantasies, all the silent nights and half-choked sobs, I found myself in a place I never expected. The beginning of a shaky truce. We stood at the edge of an uncertain path, two broken people trying to decide if we could walk it together. On a Sunday night, after we finally scheduled our first therapy appointment, Evelyn found me in the kitchen. She slipped her arms around my waist from behind, resting her cheek against my back. I could feel her breath, warm and slightly unsteady. We stood there without speaking for a long minute. Then she whispered, "Thank you for giving me this chance." I didn't reply immediately. My eyes flicked to the window, where the suburban lights glowed softly. I thought of all the nights I'd spent imagining how to hurt her back, how to make her taste the betrayal she'd served me. Maybe I had succeeded, or maybe not enough. But I was tired, tired of punishing, tired of being consumed by bitterness. When I turned to face her, the sorrow in her eyes mirrored my own. I brushed a strand of hair from her face. She closed her eyes at my touch. "Don't make me regret it," I said, voice quiet, but I meant every word. She nodded, tears gathering at the corners of her eyes. "I won't," she whispered. In that moment, we both knew there were no guarantees. We had no illusions about an easy road, but we each held the faint hope that if we bled enough honesty, if we tore ourselves open to the marrow, maybe we could stitch together something new, something that wouldn't erase the past, but might eventually allow us to breathe again. And so, for the first time in what felt like eternity, I let myself rest against her, letting her arms circle me. The sting of betrayal still throbbed, but there was a tiny flicker of warmth in the midst of the ruin, a flicker I wasn't sure we deserved, but that I decided to reach for anyway. I let go, just for that moment, of the revenge that had fueled me. But I didn't let go of her, not entirely. Maybe I should have. Maybe I should have told her I could never see her the same way. Yet I found that I couldn't banish her from my life. Not yet. A silent tear slid down my cheek, hidden by the curve of her neck. A small, trembling exhalation escaped my chest. I closed my eyes, feeling the weight of everything we'd endured pressing around us like the walls of a narrow corridor. And I stayed there, holding on, uncertain, wounded, but alive.